All right, we're back. We are MAPD714 in the fall 2017 semester, and we are week 3, part 2 of our broadcast, talking about intermediate level interactions, right from the book. I'm going to bring up Xcode. Some people are having some issues with the device now. On the break, what I did was I handed out some devices so we can test with. I'm going to go back to simulator again for now. For those people who are having problems with their devices, please go back to the simulator so we can continue for now, and we'll figure out the problem together. What we found out was that the deployment target on my old phones, because we haven't updated them, is 10.2 instead of 10.3. I'm targeting an iPhone device. As an example, I've taken away landscape and left and right, and I'm only targeting portraits. That's what I'm doing, just from a change perspective. I also had to change my Xcode profile, my provisioning profile to Centennial. This is me, because unless I did this, it wouldn't allow me to build and deploy to a device. So I need to do all those things. Some of you were successful, some of you were not. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. But I wanted to give you the phones early. This is the reason for this, because you're going to have serious stuff to do. And then over the course of this year together, we're going to be together for 8 months, right? Then you need to have access to devices. You need to have access to working Xcode, fix your Xcode, all that kind of stuff. Maybe I can help too, because if you don't, when it comes to the project next year, in 2018, there's going to be a capstone project. You need to deploy it on device. You need to test on a device. And it's really important to know how to do that. So that's why I'm giving it to you way early now. That's the reason why we spent that time. Okay, so now let's continue with what we're doing. In the PowerPoint, in the back, I have all the code sections. So if you actually look here, we'll talk about the code without me having to fill it, but we can also talk about what's your approach. Make sure I get to the right places, which is probably going to be somewhere down in this area here after line 36. Right, we did all this stuff. Okay, so we did this, name field and number field. We completed this part. That was a check, right? We did that part. And then, well, we had a problem when we checked the simulator. Closing the keyboard was an issue, right? And the reason for this is because the text box, just like it is in Visual Studio Code and Android and so on, Android is a little different. It's a little smarter in some ways the way it does it. It actually does it automatically. But for us, if I run this in the simulator, right? And if I run this code here, let's try it out. Hopefully it won't crash me now, right? But when we run it, you're going to see in the simulator when I actually click in the field in here, it should bring up my keyboard, yeah? Well, guess what? If I click away, it stays up. So I need to be able to change the first responder. So the first responder, whenever you hear this, is the control, usually a text control, right, that's waiting for some kind of input. So for example, if I type in the name here in the simulator, Tom, right, my first responder is still this text box, this text field, right? So I want to be able to go like done. I want to be able to finish. So let me just make this a little smaller for you to see, because my scale is a little bit too big. So here's my little box, and notice I have return, but my text field doesn't do anything. And what I have to do is something called, I have to resign first responder. That's what it's called, right? I have to basically say, I'm going to give up the rights from my text box to be my first responder, right? And then when I do that, once I resign first responder, it's going to lower the keyboard, okay? So that's kind of funky. But there's a couple things we want to do. We want to do it this way. When I press return, I want it to go down. And when I click anywhere in the background here, I also want it to go down, because that's kind of a common thing we do. Click away, and then the keyboard goes away, right? So I kind of documented that in the PowerPoint here, or in the PDF. It shows the keyboard. We try to do this, and it doesn't go away. How do we make the keyboard go away? Well, what we have to do here, it says, first of all, the text fields are special. we didn't address these text fields. Let's go back to the text field for a second. If I go back to the main storyboard, and if I click on the text field, right, and if I go back to my properties, right, this part here, the attributes, then is there somewhere here that allows me to have a different kind of keyboard? That's the first part. Can I select a keyboard? Where? Which is right there, right? Default. I can decide different kinds of keyboards that I want. Now, I have a name. I may not need a default keyboard. Maybe I just want, you know, some kind of numeric and punctuation. If I was going to do that, I would probably put something in there. Maybe a phone pad or something else. Here, it's okay for it to be default. I'm good, right? How about this one? My number, this one, maybe I don't want to put in a name like alphanumeric characters. I can limit my keyboard input, right? So I can say, well, it's a number pad, right? I want the number pad coming up, or a phone pad. That's probably what I want, phone pad or a number pad. And to test this out, to see if I get the right keyboard, right? If I click in there, because Apple comes with a bunch of default keyboards. If I click in there, I get this. Is that what I want? I think it's pretty good. I'll be there in a second, right? Same problem. Okay, so now this is the problem. So phone pad maybe is okay. Let's see what the difference between a phone pad and number pad is. So a phone pad just give me phone. If I run it again, let's see if I get something different now when I put the phone pad up, or the number pad instead of the phone pad. Almost the same, except you don't have this part here, which is the star something or another here, right? Almost the same. So I can write in a number, right? But when I click away or I click here, this changes. See how it changes from one keyboard to the other? Because I'm shifting the first responders. That's okay. I'm moving from one text field to the other. Now the first responder is going to point to the next text field. But what if I'm done? My return, right? I don't want this to say return. I want my return key to say done, right? So here's my return key. I can choose what I want it to say. Like I want it to say done, and I want it to say done. You can choose that. So you can specify what you want to say. Or you can specify next. And what next will do, maybe you want to make it so that it moves to the next one. I'm just going to say done here for now. Okay, done, done. All right. So if I run it again one more time, you can see that I can change the appearance of how the keyboard looks as well. But in this case, I just wanted to say done. See, now I've changed my return to done, but done doesn't do anything. To fix this, like it says here, right, the done button, I want to charge up this new function, right? Basically, I want to get this did end on exit. When the user taps the done button on the text keyboard, a did end on exit event will be generated, but I'm not listening for it, right? I'm not listening for that kind of event, right? So I can add an action method, right, like this. I can type it in, right? That's the first thing I need to do. This thing here. So it's an IB action with my text field done editing, right? Is this enough? Let's type it in. So I'm gonna, if I want to type it in, I can do that. Text field done editing, or it's a UI text field. Can't I automatically generate it? Yeah, I can. I can just drag and drop, right? So if I do one of these, right? And if I pull up my control and I get rid of this part down here because I don't care about this part right now, and I'll hide this one, and I'm going to go down into my action method. I get a bunch of empty action methods, and I'm just going to give me some space below the first one. This is the first one we're dealing with right now, right? I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to get rid of some space here so I can see what I'm doing. And now I've got this thing here, this text box, right? Remember what I'm going to call it is text field done editing. That's what I want to call it. So I'm going to kind of control drag in here. And instead of an outlet, I'm going to go action. It's going to be of type UI text field. And it's going to be text field done editing. and I'm going to click connect. So I've got both an outlet and an action for my text fields right now. All right. And you know what? Just to do that, yeah. But if I don't have a keyboard, that's inside your simulator. It's because you can activate it. There's a way of activating it in your choices, right? If you don't have a keyboard, if you've typed with your regular keyboard in there, the other keyboard won't appear. You have to put it back. I'll be right back. Let me show you in a second, all right? It's there, it's just you've disabled it, right? You have to enable the keyboard again. All right, so I want to do the same thing with this one. So I'm going to kind of control, drag. I want to share the same one, the text field's done editing, one of those two, right? So now if I hover over, you can see both those name and the number text field are connected to it, right? Outlet up here and action down here. I need both. All right, and now I want to take this sender, whatever the sender is, dot resign first responder. Let's try that, just like that. So sender dot, and I want to resign first responder. Resign first responder. All right. And if this works, we're good, right? Let's see if it works for us. Bum. And I get in there and then press done. And oh man, what happened? How come it didn't go away? But this one is not a done. This is something else. And I press done and nothing happened, right? Why? Well, it's also the type of event, right? What type of event did I choose on my connection, right? So one of them is I want this event, but let's choose this for a second and go back to my connection type. So my connection type is editing did end. Editing did end. That's the kind of event. So that's correct, right? And let's see if that's the right one we wanted, right? Because we want to follow the steps, right? So did end on exit, right, is what I want, not editing did end, right? So I've actually chosen the wrong event, right? Editing did end means when I press I'm done editing. Doesn't mean that did end on exit. That's a different one. That's this one. So let's disconnect this one and disconnect this one and try it again. And I'll show you what you can do to fix this problem. So if I control drag now, right? Can I move this? Is there some way of moving this event up here somehow? Is there a way of dragging from here to there? How about that? Let's undo that change. So did end on exit. Here's the connection, right here. Can I somehow drag to this one? Yeah, that works, right? Same thing with this one. I can actually drag from one part. And don't worry if you can't remember this because I'm recording it. Did end on exit. I'm going to do the same thing. So there we go. All right, so those are apparently the right events. Let's see if it works this time. La la la. I know this one will work, but this one's a number and it doesn't have a done button. So I'm not sure if that's going to work. So boom, done. Right, that worked. And that doesn't have a done. That doesn't have a done button at all. Uh-oh, no done button. Right, so let's fix that. So I'm going to go back to here. I want to do a done button, but I'm using a number keypad. That's not good, right? Maybe numbers and punctuation is what I want, and I want a done button there. So you see, I have to figure out the right type of keyboard that I want in order for me to get that done button. Otherwise, I'm getting a backspace, which is not done button. Yay, and that's numbers and punctuation, and that'll go away. So that's one. I did this part, right? With that part, that little event. So I've got both an outlet and an action for my text fields, right? But there's another problem, and the other problem is I want to be able to click somewhere on the background, anywhere on the background, and I also want my keyboard to go away. That's a different kind of event. And it talks about that again. These are by the way, this is like text field and user interface 101, okay? Everyone learns about did resign first responder, okay? Or resign first responder. All right, so yes, we're good. We want to touch on the background, and it talks about this, but we want to create something called a gesture recognizer, right? And the exact one we need is a tap gesture recognizer. That's what we want to do. So whenever we tap on the back somewhere, we want to add a new object, which is inside of our library in this case. This is different, right? I want to find I want to type tap. There's something called a tap gesture recognizer, right? And I can add it into my outliner. Even though it doesn't appear as a visual control, it's still a control, okay? So I can take my tap gesture recognizer and drag it to my, my view, right? When I do that, the tap gesture recognizer actually appears as part of my view. And if you notice the picture that we have here, it's right underneath the exit, right? Okay, it's just like any other control now, right? Let me just get rid of this part. I need to create another action. So I'm going to drag and control drag from here to here, right? It's of type UI tap gesture recognizer, and it needs to be an action again. And they recommend, I'm not going to go the oh, by the way, they also talk about some other things we're going to set up in a second. But what do they recommend calling it? Oh, yeah, they're going to call it on-tap gesture recognizer. Okay, of course. Of course. On-tap gesture recognized. Recognized. So when I recognize the gesture, I'm going to do something. Yay. And it's just like any action. So when I tap anywhere in the background, that's what this recognizer does, right? Let me just get rid of this now. The good thing is what it also brought up was a little bit of some options. Notice that there's a number of taps. Is it 1 tap, 2 taps? How many touches? You can have multi-touch, you know, multi-fingers, 1 tap. You can create your own gesture recognizer for this, right? You can even make your own thing. And if notice it's enabled, it cancels touches in view. And if you notice what it says is you want to leave these alone, right? Lays, touches, ended. All right, so that's the first part. The next part is you want to, this is where the name field and the number field outlets, we're going to resign first responder in here too for both of them. All right, so inside of here, just to make more room so you can see it, right? We're inside of our on-tap gesture recognized, and we're going to just access the fields, which is the name. If I start typing name text fields, right? Dot resign first responder, right? And the number text field, the one I defined, and resign first responder from that one too. Then, my friends, we should be able to tap somewhere on the back of the screen, and it should fix the keyboard issue. And you'll always have this keyboard issue for now and forever. I've always had it every single time I'm doing this thing, right? So click here, you can see it comes up. I click anywhere in the background and it disappears now, right? Click here, comes up. Click anywhere in the background, it disappears. Click here, comes up, press done, it's goodbye, right? Yeah, and I need to fix it. Make sense? So it's called resign first responder. Your first responder is your we're resigning the default responder to that particular oh, that's are you inside the right area? That's the only reason why I shouldn't do that. That's bizarre. Okay, we're back. So we did that part. Okay. Sorry? Oh. So in the window, right, when you want to go to hardware, right? And notice on the hardware you have keyboard, right? And if I want to toggle my software keyboard, it's Command K. Try it. And that should bring it back up. Because you can toggle it off and on if you want to use your regular keyboard to test with or the software keyboard in the simulator. All right, Command K. There's other things here like touch pressure. You can use trackpad. I have a pressure for my trackpad is 3D, like all the newer laptops, right? And I can also target different displays. Anyways, let's continue. All right, so that part is done. I wanted to take care of the gesture, and we definitely wanted to take care of that because that was an issue that was plaguing me, right? Let's stop this for a second. And if I want to get rid of this assistant, if I turn the assistant off, as an example, here's my assistant off. I want to bring this a little bit closer, and I can get rid of this part and bring this back over again. Or I can turn the assistant back on and turn this part off. And I think this is probably a good view to have because I want to be able to deal with my other issues here. So we have on slider change. Okay, here's the next one. When the slider changes, what do I want to do? Let's figure this out really quickly. And then we're going to stop this because I have to give you some time today to work on other things. All right? I change the text field, right? So the slider, this has to change, right? And what is it going to change to? Whatever the value of my sender is, right? So can I get a value, like if I go sender dot current maximum track image, is there some kind of current value? Is that possible? Or is it, if I put in value, if I start typing value in here, is that enough? Not the actual thing, but the value. So sender value is what I want to do here, if it's possible. But what do I want to change? I want to change the slider label. Let's make some space. So slider label, and I want to change the text property of the slider label to my sender value. Is that possible? Something like that. But sender value needs some kind of something to tell it that there's a problem. Let's just take that away for a second and go to this and see if there's an issue. Cannot assign value of type float to type string. What do I do to convert? Is there a conversion or something I can do that? Huh? Is it a capital S or a lowercase s? And tell me why it would be either one. Capital S, and in brackets you're saying do one of these, right? Is this conversion? So why would it be capital? Because string is, if we did it right, string is your class, right? And we're casting the value, if it's a floating point number, if that's true, if I'm right, to a string, because what I told you before is everything on the user interface must be a string. Everything. Incoming or outgoing. It's got to be a string, even if it's a number. Even if it looks like a number, it's a string. But the slider, you know, it's different. It's not a text field. It's something else, right? And this is where it kind of breaks that rule. Let's see if that works. So go in there, see if the slider works. And if I change this now, well, wait, it kind of works, but what do I have a problem with? The problem is my label isn't big enough to hold the 100 or the number. I didn't put a big enough number in there. I didn't anticipate that. Remember, I don't have any constraints still. No constraints, right? I didn't even figure that out yet. All right, so let's adjust this a little bit. So I'll make the label a little bigger, which means I'll make the slider, I'll push the slider just a bit on the left, just to give it a little bit more space. And I'll save that and run it again and see if that's the problem. And by the way, I didn't put anything in there. I didn't make it centered or anything. But let's see if that's going to help me. So it gives me these odd values too. It gives me some floating point number, right? I don't want a floating point number. I want an integer. I want to cut. I want to kind of almost like I want to truncate, right? Or, sorry? I want to reduce, right? How do we say that? I want to round, right? I want to round my values, and there's a method for that. So skipping down, if you look at the code, right? Here's slider label.text. There's the sender.value, and I don't even have to use a string. I can convert it to a string. If I put it inside, this is a trick. This is actually a hack. I like thinking about it as, because I'm actually converting it by putting it inside of a string. I can still use the string, by the way. I can still put the string, but I could I can round off, so round, right, the floating point number into the lower round, that's what it is, instead of upper round, so round down instead of round up, the sender value. So I can actually do that here anyway. So I can say something like L, right, round F, and I can put this in brackets, and maybe that would be okay. Even though I don't have their version, which is with quotations and interpolation, I can try and round the actual value first before I convert it to a string. Same thing. Let's see if that works. So round. Okay. Let's see if I get the right values. Because I get the floating point numbers, I don't care about them. All I care about is a nice number. So I got that part done. Okay, cool. Now this part. So when I click on the switches, depending on which switch I click, it's going to either show the buttons or the switches. Okay, cool. So we'll just continue. We'll do one more, and then I'll let you guys do the rest. It's in here. We have no time. We're running out of time. But the code is in here. So this is the switch, on switch change. So what is it doing here? Okay, so I want to let the setting, so switches have states. That's the thing with them. Either they're switched on or switched off, right? And I want to kind of say something like this. I want to say, well, let the sender setting, whatever the setting is, and whatever the sender is, the current sender, make that is on, right? So basically, it's a Boolean. It's going to allow the setting variable as a constant be on, whatever it is, setting, right? And we're going to pass whatever this is into, and there's two switches, left switch and right switch, right? Uh-oh, wait a minute. I don't have left switch and right switch, do I? I never got that, right? I have on my controls, let me stop doing this thing. This is interesting. First of all, where's my switches? I got my button, but there they are. They're here behind this big ass button, right? Let's get it back. So I want to get this switch, and I need a couple of additional outlets, left switch and right switch. And those outlets are just references to the user interface items. I need to get references for them. That's what the outlets are, if you think about that, right? So I can do something with them. And I can differentiate which one from the other. So this is the left switch, control drag. And I'll make this an outlet. I'll call it left switch. And I'll do the same thing for the right switch. Notice it changes the name too, right? So control drag. And I'll make this the right switch, just outlets. There we go. And now that I have those inside of my segmented control, I want to do that statement. I want to say, well, let my setting, right? I want to make it so that the sender is on, right? And that's what it says, right? It says sender is on. Well, remember I told you about sometimes what happens? Sometimes what happens, because this is UI, look, it says that this is a UI switch. And this is interesting. I put this in the wrong place, right? This is my segmented control. Well, hold on a second. I'm looking at the wrong one. This one should be actually here on switch change with a UI switch, right? I'm getting a bit of an error, right? Getting a bit of an error. It says that initialization of a variable, la 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 la, and I've got to switch the sender. But look in my documentation, it doesn't need that. let's ignore it for now and move on. Let me show you what I'm talking about for a second, okay? So it's an immutable variable because I'm using let, right? I'm using let. And here's my left switch dot, right? And if you notice what it says is set on. And we want to pass a Boolean, which is going to be setting. That's what that is. And my animated, I'm going to make it true, so it's still animated. So true. And the same thing goes with right switch on. Set on, passing my setting option. And you can see that I can go true. So what I'm doing is I'm following the pattern that it's giving me. But this is not going away until now. Why is that? Because it didn't have any kind of input. And the setting is referring to a reference to whether the switch is on or off based on the sender object. And until I use this thing in Swift, it's undefined. It's a Swift thing. If I run it now, I still don't have complete options. I can't get to my switch. I just wanted to see if it builds and runs. This is what I'm doing here. Builds and runs. I have access to my switches, but you see that, they kind of both switch on and off at the same time. When I click onto them, it should be one or the other, but it's both happening. Why is that happening? Can anyone figure that out? Okay, setting in both. I've done that in both. What am I supposed to do instead? Well, because in here, that's what they're doing, right? They're saying, well, if this is on, then I'm going to change the switch. Depending on which the sender is, I'm going to switch it. That's what changes it from one switch to the other. It's kind of it's supposed to shift from one to the other, right? But that's some problem there. You find a solution? No. Say that again. I could. My sender is the switch, right? I can check to see which one it is, and I can set on the switch based on which sender is the one that is on, right? And then if it's true, then that's the one I'm going to switch, not both of them. I can check, right? So, well, that's kind of weird because if I turn it on one, then it should switch the other one. That's what it's going to be. Basically, it's a toggle. If one turns on, the other turns off. That's what's supposed to happen. Let's get back to this, and we'll talk. There's probably something I did wrong, but I'm not going to continue. I want to get the other one there, that other button. Oh, yes. Now, this is called toggle controls. This is interesting, toggle controls. So here's something that we can do. We can say if sender selected segment index. What's the selected segment index? Well, it's this, right? Remember we went to this, and I showed you up on the control, the segments. So I can show one or the other. And notice there's a segment index, 0 and 1. So if the segment index is 0, that's kind of a poor way of writing it. That means it's the first one. Then make sure that the left switch and right switch is hidden, right? Or sorry, turn them on. And then the do something button is hidden. Turn that off, right? That's all I'm doing. Otherwise, do it the other way around. So it's kind of a very simple way of doing it, and that's the toggle controls. That's if the on-segmented control change, this one. So if I say, well, if sender, and it's looking for the selected segment index is equal to 0, well, then I want to do something. And then if it's not, then I want to do something else. That's what I want to do with my controls, right? So I want to say, well, if it's 0, that means that I want to see the switches, then the button is off. So left switch, right, dot enabled, right, is enabled is equal to true. I think it is. And so is right switch. You can see that it gives me some good code hinting. Is it enabled or visible? It's hidden. Sorry, I'll be okay. Enabled, you can actually enable them and disable them too. So it'll stop you. It's hidden. There we go. Yeah, is enabled is a really cool thing because you can actually disable controls based on you're waiting for user input, right? Okay, and then the do something, check the do something button. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute, do I have a do something button outlet? Right? No, I need one or else I can't control it. I can't control its state. I can listen for button presses, but I can't control its state unless I create an outlet for the button as well. So let's just do that. So I'm going to drag, control drag. That's why this is kind of interesting. And I want to make a button, which is going to be this do something button, do something button, right? It's just giving me a UI button reference. I'm getting a reference to the user interface item inside my user interface. Now I can do something about it down here, right? So do something button, right, dot is hidden, right, is equal to true. So we're saying, well, this one is equal to false because we want to see this, right? We want to see the buttons. If it's the first segment to control, we're looking at switches, not buttons, right? So these are false, so it's not hidden anymore. And then we want to take this same stuff, copy it and put it in here, and we want to say that these are true, and that is false. We can hide or show different controls based on selections. Let's try that out. Okay. So if I click on the button, I can see the button. If I click on the switches, I see the switches. I still have this problem looking left and right. That's wrong. But we can also check to see which one is selected. If I can use a ternary operator, right? I can say if this one is selected, if that's the sender, then turn the other one off. You know, that kind of stuff too. We can do it the other way. We don't have to do it their way for the switches. They're trying to make the switches use the setting option, right? Where's the switch? I think it's down here. And we don't have to do it this way, maybe. Maybe what we can do is do something different. We can check to see which one the sender is. So if whatever the sender is, make the other one the one that's off, right? Now, how would I do that? So I want to set on or set off, depending on whether it's the sender. So I can choose the one that's going to be on based on the other sender, right? So if I click it on, then the other one should be off, right? And can I switch it on or off as well? Let's see. So if I say right switch dot set off, can I do that? Is that possible? That's the thing to check, right? Is there both off and on, right? Or is this, well, enable just makes it so you can't touch it anymore, right? That's what enable. Enable is actually not invisible. It just turns it off. So this is kind of right, what I'm trying to do here, but I think what I've done is the way I've connected this on switch changed event is incorrect. I'm tracking both of them, and I think I'm only supposed to track one of the switches, not both. All right, so I got to go back to that. How about this on do something press? We don't care about that right now. We made the event. This is interesting. Let's go back to this thing, and I think I'm going to leave the rest for you. Yes, this is interesting as well. I want to bring up an alert, right, or an action sheet, and the way I can do that is in my on button pressed event. Okay, so this is a big bunch of code here. I'm not going to retype this in, but what it allows you to do is bring up these little message boxes that come up inside of your app. So I invite you to try that on your own if you have a problem for next time. The code is here, okay? But you may run into some issues, right? Because even though this has been written for Swift 3, the book came out in November of 2016. Lots of changes have happened. We've already got another upgrade of Swift since then. You may have to change something and look it up to fix the problem. Let's move on. So we kind of did an advanced control, and just to share what I have up on GitHub, I want to finish this off. I'll say added some functionality. I would have, if I had more time, added more commits. Every time I changed a method, I would have gone in there and changed, added a new commit, right? So I'm just going to say added partial functionality, added or partial functionality, right? Because I have too many little changes right now. And I'm going to go into source control and go commit, and I'll do the same thing. I'll say added partial functionality because we made some changes. I'll commit and push so you can see that's happening. So you have everything that I've done up to date up on mine. Okay, at this point, I'm going to stop recording because I want to go and help you guys. I want to talk about, without recording, how to do it, how to do your calculator. All right, so I'm not going to record it because then in the future someone's going to look it up and then they don't have any kind of help whatsoever. All right, so we'll see you guys next week on the video anyway.